early morning, September 11th, 2001.
Good evening. Welcome to this Candidates Forum, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Cupertino Sunnyvale. I am Roberta Hollimon, a member of the League, and will be the moderator for tonight's program. We will be having candidates for Superior Court seat number 8, for Congressional District number 15, and Assembly District number 22. Members of the audience will be submitting questions on cards, and if you have a question you want to ask, raise your hand, and our people will pass out the cards and then bring the questions up to me. Candidates have agreed to the ground rules for the forum, which include time limits on opening statements and answers to questions. We'll start with our candidates for a Superior Court, and Lane Liroff, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the League for sponsoring this event, giving us an opportunity to speak to everybody. My name is Lane Liroff, and I'm running for judge. I'm running because of a sense of commitment to the community. I fell in love with the law 35 years ago as a young law student because it provided for me a sense of structure that I appreciated, but also it provides the opportunity to be able to make a difference, to help others, and to be involved in the community, which have become my watchwords in my career. I started out as a young lawyer working for the district attorney's office. I've also spent, I was recruited to work in the Clinton Justice Department and worked for Attorney General Reno. I was a law professor for 18 years. I've been very active in the community, but also active in the legal community as a bar leader. I've been a co-author for a number of law books trying to help lawyers be better lawyers. And also, I've gotten a lot of recognition for my work as a lawyer. 2 years ago, I was particularly honored to be named a fellow in the American College of Trial Lawyers, a very, very prestigious organization. Now, my campaign has met with a lot of success, and I feel very encouraged by the type of support that I've gotten. I've been endorsed not only by the district attorney of this county, Dolores Carr, but also the sheriff, Lori Smith, and the Santa Clara County Bar Association. The Bar Association is the largest organization of lawyers in the county, about 5,000 strong. And lastly, I've been endorsed by those people who would know best who would make a judge. I've been endorsed by over 60 Superior Court judges and court commissioners. Thank you very much.
And Diane Ritchie, your opening statement.
Thank you. I've been an attorney in Santa Clara County for 27 years, and I can tell you why I'm the best qualified candidate for Santa Clara County Superior Court Judge. In addition to being an attorney, for the last 9 years, I've been a mediator. When I mediate for the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, I literally have the highest settlement rate of any mediator in the state. I have the same settlement rate in my private mediations, in the mediations that I do for the Superior Court, and also in the, in mediations where people hire me. So each of those, I have a 70% settlement rate. So if people will just sit down with me, I can give them a 70% chance of being able to resolve their cases. That is something that our Superior Court and actually courts everywhere really need, because it takes many years for a judge to learn how to be a good settlement judge. I'm coming with that knowledge. It saves the taxpayers, it saves the parties. Also, I have a very broad experience. I've done, I was a deputy district attorney in Santa Clara County, and I've done important cases, including child molest. But in addition to that, I have 24 years of experience as a civil lawyer, doing everything from family law, real estate, landlord-tenant, personal injury, medical malpractice, to labor law. And for the last 19 years, I've been a labor and employment attorney. The Superior Court rotates new judges for the first 5 to 10 years to a new area of law. So no matter what area they put me in, I can hit the ground running. Also, in the area of labor and employment law, we only have 4 judges who came from a career in labor and employment law. That's only about 4% of the court. And if you read the newspapers, you know how much litigation there is in the area of labor and employment law. So I want you to know that I will come with the skills that the court needs.
Thank you very much. want to remind the audience that you can submit questions. Hold your card up and someone will come and collect it. And if you need a card, hold your hand up and they will bring you a card or several cards. So while we're getting those cards, let me ask you this. There are several criminal justice questions on the ballot, several propositions. And what do you feel about them? This is a time when you have 1.5 minutes to answer the question, and we'll start with Diane Ritchie.
The Judicial Code of Ethics, Canon 5, specifically states that judges and judicial candidates are not allowed to answer questions regarding issues which may come before the court. I would find it difficult to answer this question. I guess I could let Lane give his initial feelings, and I'm certainly willing to follow, but from the way you phrased it, I'm not sure how to answer the question.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Liroff?
Their canons do prohibit judges or judge candidates from partaking of political activity or taking a position on a matter that may come before the court. But there is a good broad exception relating to matters relating to the administration of justice. There are 3 things that are on the ballot right now, and while I don't want to take a position because I don't think it's appropriate, I can comment on them. First is there is a number 5, which I believe it's number 5, which is about drug rehabilitation. I think it's important that everyone know there's an active, very successful drug program going on right now, and there's some dispute about the effectiveness of this new proposition. There's another statute that's called the Victims' Bill of Rights. As an attorney, without expressing an opinion, it makes very broad, sweeping pronouncements that may provide substantive rights to victims that I'm not sure that will be healthy. And I see that I have a stop sign, but if you want me to, I can talk about the last proposition relating to jail construction.
Well, we do have to stop now,
okay.
But perhaps later or in your closing statement you can address that. So we do have some questions from the audience. The first one asks, as judge, how will you support the newly developing restorative justice movement and appropriate sentencing? We'll start with Mr. Liroff.
Thank you. I have spent much of the last 25 years prosecuting homicide cases, the most serious cases, challenging cases against the most dangerous criminals. But that's also given me a good perspective of the criminal justice system. I'm very concerned about about young people who get involved in the court, who are looking at possible sentencing. What they're not looking at the most serious of crimes. When public safety is not an issue, what I would like to do is I would like to be able to see if there is sentencing that can accomplish rehabilitation, that avoids the revolving door of justice and allows the person to perhaps learn from the process and come out a better person for that. I think that's better for society. I also think that it is appropriate at this time when we have diminishing assets available to us. I think we have to be realistic that judges can't mint money. They can't do what no one else can do in this system, and we've got to learn how to be effective and smarter about sentencing. Thank you.
Ms. Ritchie?
When I was a deputy district attorney in Santa Clara County, two of the calendars that I handled one was in juvenile court, one was in dependency, and so especially with regard to young people, I actually agree with Lane that you need to be very careful the kind of sentences that you give to young people, make sure that they're realistic, and certainly strive to help those young people get the resources that they need so that this isn't going to be a chronic problem for them throughout their lives. One of the things that we noticed as district attorneys was that the same children who were dependents of the court up until, from the time they were little to the time they maybe were 12 or 13, went on to become, in the juvenile court, juvenile delinquents. So reaching them at an earlier time is certainly very important. One of the things that I know that is done in Santa Clara County, and I think it's very effective, there's a mediation program between victims and defendants who actually have already pled guilty to whatever crime. And if it's not a serious violent crime, then the victim is willing to go through it, we set up a meeting with a trained mediator between the two, and it's often very, very valuable for an offender to have to interact personally with the person who's been harmed.
Thank you. We have 2 questions on the same topic, so it must be important to people. One says, please discuss jury nullification, and the other says, what is your view on jury nullification? And so we'll start with Ms. Ritchie.
My understanding of jury nullification is that jury nullification is where the jury does not apply the law, and that has happened for quite a long time. Certainly during the civil rights movement, we saw in the South that frequently Southern juries would not apply the law, even in cases of murder. And we also saw more in this area during the 60s and 70s that jurors didn't want to apply the law in cases where someone was protesting against the war. So I understand that jurors often have very, very strong feelings. Obviously, my feeling would be that it's important to honor the democratic process and to apply the law, and that jurors need to do that. I also understand that there are people who have a very different feeling and feel that jurors should have to answer only to their own conscience. I can say that with the rules of evidence, the rules of procedure the way they are, I think that a juror would have to know a great deal to try to apply their own opinion in a fair manner, and that I would not be in favor of jury nullification.
Thank you. Mr. Liroff?
Thank you. There is a movement espoused by some people that favors the right of jury nullification. The principle is that jurors, all jurors, have a fundamental right to do what they want if they serve on the jury. And I think when described that way, there's something noble about it. The problem is that we all have many different perceptions and ideas of what we would want to do. And Diane is correct that that same principle of jury nullification allowed people in the South to perhaps acquit people who were charged with very serious crimes against African Americans. And no one thought that was right. And the law has always been in this country that someone who espouses jury nullification cannot serve as a juror. The reason being is that if you can't agree to follow the law, then we can't seat you because we don't know what you'll do as a juror. And I think fundamentally, in terms of fairness for all the litigants, we can't tolerate a system that would want people to march to varying drummers that doesn't account for justice. So I would also agree with Diane that I'm opposed to the concept of jury nullification. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have another question? Okay. How will you resist the temptation to always side with the moneyed corporate or dominant party? And we'll start with Mr. Liroff.
I don't think there will be that temptation. I don't think that what I perceive my responsibility as a judge to be. I should point out to you that as a prosecutor, I've had a reputation for doing what's the right thing or the courageous thing, regardless of the politics that may be behind a particular issue. And I think the same thing is true in any position that you serve as a judge. Your responsibility is always to your conscience, but to do what's right and what's noble in the law. And you'd be surprised, in the law, we have a lot of opportunities for that, to do the higher thing, the better thing. And I think it would be very wrong to think, for any judge, to believe that their responsibility was to serve anything other than justice. So as a result, I don't think I will have that urge, and I don't think I will have that problem.
Ms. Ritchie?
For those of you who've been able to look at my literature or know anything about me, you know that actually I've spent my entire life and my entire career serving those who are disenfranchised and serving the poor. I started out in senior adult legal assistance in the Disability Law Center. I have worked on behalf of working people. I've handled cases where people were not paid for overtime. I had a case against Taco Bell that resulted in a $13 million settlement for Taco Bell managers and assistant managers who are not being paid for their overtime. When I got the fees from that case and from a case against Wendy's that was very similar, I had enough money for myself temporarily that I was able to go to the Legal Aid Society of Santa Clara County, and I asked the director there to form an employment law unit so that I could represent workers who were not being paid minimum wage. So I was able to represent extremely low-income workers. I was able to represent day laborers. I was able to represent hotel maids. I represented Russian hotel maids who were provided to large chains throughout the United States. They weren't paid even minimum wage. They were required to pay the agency that provided them rent for mattresses on the floor, for transportation, and by the end of the week, frequently, they owed money. I was able to get them paid.
Thank you. Our next question is, and I think you probably figure out who's going to answer next. Usually if there's more than two candidates, I like to mix it all up, but can't do it with just two. What are your priorities as a Superior Court judge, Ms. Ritchie?
My priorities are to do a very good job for the court. So as a brand new judge, either one of us will probably be assigned to misdemeanors. I've certainly handled misdemeanors. I'm going to make sure that every person who goes through, that I listen to them, that I treat them with respect, because as a judge, even if someone's charged with a crime, certainly you should treat them with respect. I know that for either one of us, our next assignment will probably, statistically, be family court. I've done that. I think I can help people as much as possible be able to communicate. So I want to bring those skills. And then when I'm more senior and I'm able to do the area of law that I've spent most of my time doing, I want to be able to do labor and employment cases so that there's some predictability in the court, so that we've got that expertise. These cases are worth millions of dollars, and really we need the time and expertise to do a really good job on that. So that's what I plan to do.
Thank you. Mr. Liroff.
Well, as I said at the beginning, the law has always been my passion. And what I'm constantly concerned about, and I think it's important because we don't read in the newspaper about problems in the court relating to cases involving labor law, but what we do read about are issues about the justice system. And as a former law professor, also as a longtime instructor for police officers, and as a lecturer for lawyers, I'm always concerned about the quality of lawyering in the system. And I would like to, as a priority, do what I can to raise that bar. When you read about issues in the newspaper, it wasn't, or it was caused in part by the quality of the lawyering. When that series of articles came out in the Mercury 2 years ago, I helped organize a very large seminar that was made available to all DAs, all public defenders, all private attorneys. It was attended by judges and law professors, because I wanted to demonstrate first that we lawyers care about the justice system to make sure that it's better. I didn't like the way it was shown in the newspaper. Not that the criticisms were wrong, but that we always have to try and do better. And that's what I'd like to do if elected. What I'd like to do is help teach and raise the bar of professionalism for lawyers who appear in courts in this county. Thank you.
Okay. Next, you both answered that one. Sometimes I.
You know, we could ask each other a question.
We might consider that. But here I have another question. Please comment on Measure 8, which would outlaw gay marriage. Mr. Liroff.
Now I think we've gotten close to that line that Diane raised before. I think Measure 8 is a fascinating measure. A lot of my friends are very concerned one way or another about it. However, commenting upon that really does cross that line of political activity. And as much as I'd like to, I don't feel that I'm capable of doing that. I should explain, though, it's not that judicial candidates don't have opinions or they get to play this game of gotcha. Rather, what's wrong is a candidate who takes a particular position as a judicial candidate to run on that position. So you would say, for example, well, this candidate's opposed to capital punishment. I'll vote for that person, because that's not the way the judicial system works. Anybody who becomes a judge is going to be required to follow that law. They're swearing when they are elected, and they take that position to follow the law. So it's a contradiction then to choose your candidates based upon what their politics are. What you should be doing is you choose your candidates, your judicial candidates, based upon their abilities, their accomplishments, the respect that they hold in the community, the endorsements that they have, things like that. Thank you.
Ms. Ritchie, do you care to comment on this?
I'll comment to the extent that I can, and I want you to know that Lane and I want to give you enough information that you can make a decision, but obviously starting out your judicial career by violating the canon of ethics would be a very bad idea. So we really are restricted. I can, as he said, we can certainly talk to you about our experience. I can tell you that I think it's very important that everyone be treated equally. I don't think that it's right for people's rights to be violated. I will say, since it's something that's even on my website, I handled a case against the Morgan Hill Unified School District for allowing harassment of students based on sexual orientation. It was a long case. It took about 4 years. It made new law. And that particular school district, if a bully said, oh, I think she's gay, it means that they wouldn't be punished at all. It was really almost like painting a target on these young people. We were successful in being able to settle that case. Eventually, they changed their policies and practices, so they gave the same protection to these young people as they did to all those young people. So based on my background, I can say it's very important to me that everyone be treated equally.
Thank you. Sentences for officers of the law tend to be less than sentences for average citizens. Why do you think that is? Or do you think that is? And we'll start with Ms. Ritchie.
Well, actually, I would have to say that it is not my impression that that is the case. It is my impression, and certainly when I was a district attorney, it was clear to me that someone who was in a position of power sometimes was sentenced more harshly because of the abuse of that power. I think courts, and I certainly think that our local district attorney's office does not grant favors to people in law enforcement. So I know that that may be the impression, and for all I know, outside of the Bay Area, where I'm, in other parts of the country, that may be true. I don't think that that is true in this county.
Mr. Liroff.
Thank you. One of the things that I've had responsibility for as a longtime district attorney is handling cases involving law enforcement where there was an abuse of authority. So I spent a lot of time in this area. Some of you may know a few years ago, I was assigned the prosecution of a case of a law enforcement officer who shot a man in the back from 75 feet away, a man who was running away from him, a man who was unarmed. He was chasing him because he had mistakenly identified him as a parolee who was at large. But when I pressed him, he said, well, I was looking for a Hispanic, and this guy was a Hispanic, and he had a mustache. I've prosecuted, in other instances, law enforcement officers for abuse of force, for theft, for sex crimes. Law enforcement officers are just like everybody else. Though they are sworn, and they do, by and large, an excellent job in our community. But my policy has always been that when a law enforcement officer strays, my responsibility was to the justice system to make sure that everyone's treated fairly, and that if a person has violated the law, to hold them accountable. That's what I've done in my career. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't expect the economy to come up in this contest, but here we have one. What is your plan to maximize justice per dollar spent? Mr. Liroff.
Well, in these, Diane and I have gone through a primary. So we've been on the stump all around the county now since before June. And I've been the one who repeatedly, when people raise the issue of how can we deal with this program or what can we do, the one to point out that judges are not placed in the position where they can raise taxes or they can increase their funding. Instead, they have to be responsible to the assets that are provided. So given that, I think what judges have to do is ensure that the process runs uniformly, fairly. I don't know about you, but I know a number of people who've gone to jury duty, and they get called down there. They're there before 9 o'clock, but they don't see anybody for a long time, and they're all wondering in the jury room, well, what are they doing down the hall? I think it's important that courtrooms be run on time. They be run respectful to the people who are present and know that everyone has other things that they want to do. I also think in terms of sentencing, incarceration, that we have to take steps to make sure that we're doing it meaningfully and not just for punishment's sakes. I also think that, and I vow, just as I know Diane will, that you have to work hard. You have to make sure that you're on top of things so that you don't necessarily waste funds. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Ritchie?
I think it was maybe even the very first question that I got to answer where I let you know that one of the things that I have quite a good level of skill at is helping people be able to settle their cases early. Now, obviously, that's a very important skill in civil cases. But it's also those same skills help you even in criminal cases. I can tell you first from the point of view of civil cases that being able to help people resolve a case at the very beginning, instead of having to spend a year or a year and a half or more in court, saves the court a lot of money because you don't have to continue that case through a whole series of discovery motions and then a whole series of motions regarding the case, like motions for summary judgment, and then through trial, all of which is very costly. And if it's a fair settlement early in the litigation, not only does that save the taxpayers money, it saves the parties hundreds of thousands of dollars. But that same skill in being able to listen to both sides and help each side be very realistic about what will happen at trial is also what will help me help, even in the criminal system, to resolve cases at an early stage rather than having to go through every single step and then trial.
Thank you. The San Jose Merc featured cases that were poorly served by the justice system. What power do you have as a judge to improve the correct application of the laws and codes in cases coming before you? Ms. Ritchie.
Judges have the ability to act properly. One of the things that I think many people, it's the case that the public, I think, is more aware of than any other case, was the O.J. Simpson case. And not to second guess that judge, but it gives you a very good look at a judge's ability to control their courtroom and to have each of the attorneys act in a reasonable manner. Judges really can do that. Judges need to be careful that each side has a fair right, but a judge can control what goes on in their courtroom. So I think that that is maybe the main thing that I would do.
Mr. Liroff?
Well, I think this highlights why I think I am the best candidate for this position. You know, 65% of the courtrooms in this county handle criminal matters. And I have focused my career and been recognized by my office, by the San Jose Police Department, by parents of murdered children, nationally for my work in the criminal justice system. And that's why we need judges who have experience in the area of criminal law. Now, I've been lecturing on behalf of the state of California, Bar of California, and the local bar about proper conduct of criminal cases. I have had that experience and handled cases of great complexity. A judge who is knowledgeable in this area can make a difference in a case because of that experience and knows well when a problem is arising that can avoid that, so that it's not something that is end up being attended to 5 years down the line when the case is reversed for some type of misconduct. Rather, what you need are people who have expertise in this area so that they can see it's happening when it happens and try and take control and make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ritchie, did you get a chance to answer this?
I did.
You did not?
She did.
You did. Okay.
Thank you.
Suffering early Alzheimer's here.
You want another try?
Can't allow that. But someone in the audience is taking you up on one of your suggestions. And so here's the question. What question would you ask of your table member or your opponent? So, Mr. Liroff, you're the first one.
Well, you know, Diane, we've been together now for about 9 months. I remember when I saw you at the Registrar of Voters and you told me that you were going to be filing. And all I wanted to know, are you enjoying yourself and are you having a good time? Because we spend a lot of time together.
We do. We do.
So did I duck it?
That's fine. And you have a chance to answer. Do you have anything? And that you can answer him,
Okay,
and then
good.
you can ask a question.
Okay. Well, actually, I am very tired, and I know, actually, every time that we go anywhere, at least for about the last month, I think I've said to Lane every single time, are you as tired as I am? And usually he says yes. We have actually known each other for over 20 years. So we've always had a really cordial relationship. It's been actually quite a pleasure to be able to campaign with you. And so I guess, gosh, what question can I ask you? I guess I'll just ask you the same question, which is, how are you doing?
Well, I'm starting a trial soon, and then I'm going to do a trial before this, before the election, which I find is good because it probably takes my mind off the stress of the election. I'm doing fine. You know, it's a good process. I'll tell you a secret. Diane and I were at a community event on Saturday that was a good example of what you learn by campaigning. While it's very exhausting, you really get out in the community and you learn to see people and you see a variety of people in our community and you realize what a great county this is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And now we come to the time for your closing statements. You have to write your questions out. I'm sorry. Oh, you have one. Okay. Someone bring it up quickly.
Okay, let's sneeze down.
Okay. Are you familiar with the new e-discovery proposed rules in California for 2009? How do you feel about them? And I think it's Ms. Ritchie's turn to answer first.
You know, I have to tell you that I am actually not familiar with the brand new rules that are coming out in 2009. I do know, the basis for why it's finally been decided that we should have better discovery rules in, I don't know how they came out, but for a long time, our old rules that deal with documents, because you're always asking the other side for documents, it's been ambiguous and difficult to get records inside computers, and you've had to have all sorts of experts to be able to get these. And a lot of times when you get your written documents, things are missing, and you really want to get everything from that person's computer, including earlier drafts, including every single person that it was sent to. And I know that in proposing these rules, that's what the Judicial Council has been doing, and it will greatly improve the reliability of the evidence that you get, because you can imagine, since the law lags a little bit behind technology, that it has been quite difficult. We've been able to overcome it with very specific discovery requests and good discovery judges, but I certainly welcome them.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Liroff.
Just so we're clear for the audience at large, in civil cases and somewhat in criminal cases, before a case goes to trial, to understand the strength of the other party's case, there's such a thing as discovery, that people are required to disclose information, documents. Litigation trial work has gotten so complex. When I first started in the DA's office, my file would average about 5 to 10 pages. Nowadays, the cases that I have, and it's been for some long time because I handle very complex homicide litigation, it's literally too large for me to move. I can't do it. It is several filing cabinets worth. So now I'm coming to court and leaving from court with a flash drive. And it's not just that way in my kind of cases, and it's particularly in civil. So what they're trying to do with this type of discovery is use the internet to be able to access and transfer data amongst attorneys. I think that's about as complex as I want to get to it in this type of forum. But I do believe it's something that is the way that the courts are trying to adapt to the reality of business in this 21st century. You never ask lawyers to count, so don't look to me for that. And it's probably not just as well with judges. But nevertheless, I've been a person who in my office has always embraced advantages with technology, and this is also an example that will better serve lawyers and the public at large. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we come to time for your closing statements. You have 2 minutes to leave your thoughts with the audience here and the audience watching on television. And we will start this closing with Diane Ritchie.
Let me say to you that I have been endorsed, and I want you to look at my endorsements, but for those of you in the TV audience, I've been endorsed by Dolly Sandoval, the mayor of Cupertino, by Peter Deckmeyer, who's the vice mayor of Palo Alto, by Melinda Hamilton, who's the vice mayor of Sunnyvale, by Larry Stone, who's the assessor, and by many others. So I am coming to the bench with very good support in my endorsements. Now, 30% of the judges in Santa Clara County come directly from the district attorney's office. So we have many judges who can handle criminal cases. We have so many judges who come directly from the district attorney's office that those judges serve not only in the criminal courts, but also in civil courts. They wind up handling cases in family law and in other areas. And often they don't have experience in those areas. I do have experience both in criminal law and in civil law. The other thing that having 30% of our judges come directly from the district attorney's office means is that those judges generally tend to endorse other district attorneys. And so being a district attorney gives you a slight advantage with the judges because they've worked side by side with you in the district attorney's office and they know you very well. I also have been endorsed by Judge Lodoris Cordell, who's retired, and also Judge Robert Foley, who's retired but still working on the bench, and also Judge Adoria Padilla. But certainly, you can look at the endorsements that I have. I've been endorsed by the Santa Clara County Trial Lawyers Association and by many attorneys in many different areas of law because I have that background. So I'll be able to help people resolve their cases fairly at the earliest stage of the litigation, and I bring a very broad experience to the court.
Thank you. And Lane Liroff.
Thank you. Diane, we're both district attorneys. You were a district attorney and I've been a district attorney.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't explain why there is that disparity of judicial endorsements. I've been endorsed by 63 judges and court commissioners. Only 21 of them were former DAs. I've been endorsed by 41 judges who are not DAs. So that's a total of 63. What that means is the people who would know best who would be a good judge or who has the abilities that the court needs are the judges. And they've asked you to elect me to the court. My career has been about public service, about helping others. I'm reminded of a criminal case I had about 20 years ago where I met a father of a young girl, a 16-year-old girl, who was killed. She was sexually assaulted. She was in this country as a foreign exchange student. And she was from Japan. Father didn't speak much English. But when he came to me in halting language, he said, "Please help me." And I was able to do that for him. But that's what I've been able to do for the last 30 years as an attorney, helping others. I take my responsibilities as an attorney very seriously. I've always tried, and I've always felt that I've had a commitment to be the best that I can. I know that's why I've gotten the support, because in essence, the support in this race has coalesced behind me, and I respect that and I appreciate it. But I'd like your support now, and I hope that you will send me to the court, because I do know that we need judges on the court who want to make a difference, who are committed to excellence, and yet will keep an open mind and be fair. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the candidates will stay for a little bit. If you want to talk to them afterwards, they have literature out in the lobby. You can pick it up. And thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Good. So we'll take a brief break. Don't leave because it's not a long break. Let them be excused while I confer with our organizers, please. Candidates for the 15th Congressional District. There are 3 candidates: Congressman Mike Honda, Joyce Cordi, and Peter Myers. Mike Honda was not able to be here tonight, so what we do in that case is we allow the candidate to submit a statement to be read by the moderator, which I will do in a minute, but there's no opportunity for you to ask questions of that candidate. But you can ask questions of these candidates, so we'll be writing out your questions. And if you have a question and you don't have a card, raise your hand, and when you've finished a question, hold it up and someone will get it from you. So we're going to start with the candidate statement by Mike Honda. So you have to pretend I'm Mike Honda. Hello, I am Mike Honda, and I represent California's 15th Congressional District, which encompasses much of Santa Clara County. Since you sent me to Washington in 2001, I have been fighting for issues that matter to you, such as our children's education, energy independence, fixing our health care system, immigration reform, reviving our economy, and ending the Iraq War. As a member of the House Appropriations Committee, I have ensured that your tax dollars are well spent here in Silicon Valley. Recently, I secured federal funds to equip a new crime lab for Santa Clara County. This investment will make our community safer by processing evidence faster and bringing more criminals to justice and protecting the rights of the innocent. I have also directed federal support to environmental projects that will protect our sources of drinking water and safeguard some of the Bay Area's most beautiful natural landscapes. My 30-year career as a teacher and principal in our area's schools taught me the importance of education. Now, our country's rough economic times remind us that education, a competitive labor force, and a sound economy are inextricably linked. To address this, I have introduced legislation with Senator Barack Obama that will help our children improve learning in science, math, and other technology-related fields. I have also worked on legislation with Senator Clinton that would help newcomers integrate into our society through English language acquisition and civics programs. I am proud of my record representing you in Congress. After 8 years of failed Republican policies from the White House and 12 years of Republicans running Congress, we all know that our country needs a new direction. It is time for a change. I need your vote to help bring change. Your issues are my priorities, and I humbly ask for your renewed support. I am Mike Honda, and I approve this statement. So that is his opening statement, and now we will hear from Mr. Meyer.
Okay. Myers. So I'd like to first off thank the League of Women Voters, Cupertino Television, and everyone who's attended, and everyone watching on television. It's unfortunate that Mike Honda isn't able to join us because we sort of have to take the things he said at face value. I agree with Mike Honda and Barack Obama. There is a need for change. I think that's why we're running. What Mike Honda just said were the things that he's run for. The Democrats and Republicans, the two-party system, have failed to deliver in the last 8 years. But of course, we'll talk more about that as we go on. My name is Peter Myers. I'm the Green Party candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives. I am originally from Los Gatos, and I graduated from Los Gatos High School, attended Boston University with a degree in journalism and international relations. I then served as a Peace Corps volunteer for 2 years in the Republic of Moldova, which is a former Soviet republic in Eastern Europe. There, I learned the values of peace. I learned the values of international understanding, the values of connecting with people in a peaceful way. And when I came back in 2007, I was disappointed to see that my government didn't place the same value on international understanding, on communication between nations and between people. Instead, you see, especially in the last few weeks, what the two-party system has brought to this country. Right now, the two parties have passed the bailout plan, which is basically covering them after decades of mismanagement of the entire economy. What you've had for decades in the two-party system is mismanagement of funds. I believe our federal budget deficit for this year is over $400 billion. And of course, we'll be able to talk about all those things as we go.
Ms. Cordi.
In January 2009, should start by thanking the League for providing this opportunity, as well as Cupertino Television, and to really express my regret that while we had to pass this bailout bill without real deliberation so that Congress could recess and return to its districts in order to explain that and other things to the voters, that Mike can't be with us tonight. In January 2009, Congress will need to act boldly to revitalize our economy, develop a plan to achieve energy independence, and reform or rebuild our K-12 education system. Real change will require a House of Representatives made up of thoughtful Americans who are not afraid of new and different ideas, who understand local and global economics, and are prepared to be held accountable by the voters, not for their rhetoric, but for their actions. It's easy to blame an unpopular president for the current economic mess, but the fact is that Congress is equally or more responsible. Consumer debt levels, the rising global demand for oil have been, and the national debt have been rising steadily over the last 20 years, while a generation of congressional representatives put their own political fortunes ahead of the people's interests, or lack the skills to understand the growing risks to our domestic economy and national security. The patriots who wrote our system of representative democracy into the U.S. Constitution were not professional politicians. They were doctors, lawyers, farmers, and businessmen who felt that public service was the obligation of every citizen. I offer myself as a candidate for California's 15th Congressional District in that spirit. As a technology...
Thank you. Your time has expired, but maybe you can continue with this and answering the questions, but we do have to keep to the time limit. And the first question is addressed to you, but when a question is addressed to a certain one of the candidates, the other one always has a chance to answer also. And so now you have 1.5 minutes to answer questions, and this one is to Ms. Cordi. What is your position with the current bailout plan? I presume that's the $700 billion bailout plan.
No, the $825 billion bailout plan. Number one, I was appalled that two very important pieces of legislation that have significant long-range budgetary implications, that is the production tax credit and the alternative minimum tax, got stuck onto this bill in a hurry so that they wouldn't have to go through the normal budget process. There are reasons for that. One is that one of the real big beneficiaries of that production tax credit is BP. It is also of great benefit to big agriculture, and they didn't really want to put that out in front of the taxpayer. This bailout was necessary. It doesn't, in some form, but it does not entail the protections that the American people deserve when they make this kind of investment in terms of accountability and responsibility, reporting, and a lockbox for those funds.
Mr. Myers.
So, as I was saying before, the bailout is a cover for decades of budget mismanagement. And the deficit this year is, I have it written down so I don't mess this up. It is, well, I won't waste my time finding it, $450 billion. So what are we getting from that money? Well, almost $600 billion of that is being spent on the military. What we spend on the military is more than all other countries in the world combined. Now that's the liberal estimate of how much we spend. The conservative estimate says that we budget only what the next 13 countries spend combined. So pick your statistics there. Either way, we're spending more than what we would need to fight the entire rest of the world, which the last 8 years has shown maybe some leaders in Washington want to do. The U.S. has over 700 military bases in foreign countries. It is, we're basically sticking our nose in other countries. We still have 18 bases in Germany, 63 in Japan, and 14 planned permanent military bases in Iraq. What we need to do is cut the military budget in half, work for peace, and we can start covering what the generations of Americans are going to be saddled with in debt.
Thank you. This next question is directed to Mr. Myers, being a Green Party candidate. But after he answers, Ms. Cordi, you can answer it from your perspective as a Republican candidate. Who do you plan to caucus and work with to be an effective green, progressive, and independent legislator? Mr. Myers.
Well, I'd say as the only Green elected to Congress, I would work with anyone who came to my door. But what needs to happen, and whoever asked this question made a very good point, currently there are no elected Greens in the House. And the reason why that is because of this winner-take-all two-party system. What's happening is the two major parties have concentrated so much of their money in raising the quote-unquote issues, how long we stay in Iraq, as opposed to why we should be there in the first place. The two major parties are talking about how much the bailout should be versus whether we should have a bailout at all. The two major parties are never talking about truly the rights of immigrant workers as they come in. And the two major parties are not functioning right now. I would ask that anyone who's considering voting for Mr. Honda or Ms. Cordi think of what the last decades of Democrat or Republican rule have given us. And if you're looking at your situation right now in 2008, saying everything's wonderful, the economy's great, we're at peace, my kid's education system is spectacular, then by all means vote for more of the same. But if you want real change, you don't vote for Barack Obama, you vote for Greens.
Thank you. Ms. Cordi, would you like to address this question? Do you want me to read it from the Republicans' viewpoint?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who do you plan to caucus and work with to be an effective Republican legislator?
Everybody. I'm a tech executive. I know how to get the difficult done. I get the difficult done by keeping people focused on what we have in common, the objectives, and not getting mired in the tactics. And I think that's what this country needs. We need bipartisan leadership that is focused on doing the right thing for this generation and the generations to come. And my focus in Congress is going to be to work every day to focus people on on those objectives, and that is to ask questions, to try to decompose problems so that we can find new solutions, so that we can focus on the issue and not the participants.
Thank you. Next question. What are your new and innovative ideas to fix the economy? Ms. Cordi.
Ma'am, you didn't get a chance to answer that.
I'm sorry. Thank you for catching me on that. Oh, no,
He did.
he answered as a Green Party candidate, and then she got to answer as a Republican candidate. Okay, so now.
Thank you, audience, for watching my back.
Yeah, yes, I appreciate it too. So, next question. What are your new and innovative ideas to fix the economy? And Ms. Cordi, we'll start with you.
Small and medium business runs the American economy. 80% of the jobs in this country are in companies with fewer than 500 employees. We need to infuse capital. That means straightening out the mess in the market, in the capital markets, so that money can flow and people can borrow and good businesses can be created. We need to work hard to form new capital. That means not overtaxing it. And if you want to understand how capital gains work, I'll be happy to explain that. And we need to rebuild the American manufacturing capability. What we did in the last 2 decades was to outsource the fundamental sinew of this country. We got rid of all the dirty jobs. Let somebody else, drill the oil. Let somebody else smelt the steel. Let somebody else have the coal issues. And what we did was outsource the sinew and the strength and the skilled craftsmen, the greatest generation. And if we want to restore that economy, we got to be more self-sufficient. We cannot have cheap goods and high wages. So buy American. Even when it costs you a little more, you're helping to preserve your neighbor's job.
Mr. Myers.
Well, as Ms. Cordi said, buy American. Well, how about just let's stop spending money on everything. If you want to fix the economy, first pass a constitutional amendment forcing Congress to pass a balanced budget. Only then are we going to start to actually look at our national priorities. Only then are we going to bring down defense spending. Only then are we going to figure out how to make our healthcare system the most efficient. Only then are we going to stop spending billions of dollars on a war on drugs that's not doing anything for our country, and instead pay down the debt or use that for infrastructure so that bridges in Minnesota don't collapse. What we need to do to fix the economy is not just at a government level, it's also personal. The savings rate, the personal savings rate in this country is negative. This is one of the first times it's happened in generations. I work with a lot of young people who, I'm a young person myself, of course, but I work with people even younger than myself, who look around and want to purchase this car or this computer or this iPhone. I work for Apple, so I can say that. But the key is not going to be overspending, just as it's not going to be taking out a mortgage that's higher than you can afford. The key is going to be self-discipline. It's not going to be easy in the next few years to fix this economy. But if you want to actually take steps to fix the economy, you have to look at yourself, and then you have to also vote in new leadership in Congress.
Thank you. Now, did I get both of you that time?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now I have two questions, one addressed to Mr. Myers and one to Ms. Cordi, and they're actually from two different people, but they both have to do with defense spending. So I'm going to read each question and let each of you answer either, the question that's addressed to you, or you can answer both questions, but you're going to have 1.5 minutes to do both things. So let's see, we would start with Peter Myers, so I'm going to ask the question of you first, and then I will ask the other question, and then you two can decide how you're going to answer. Okay, so to you, it's what would you propose doing with the $200 to $400 billion I think you said you would cut the Department of Defense budget by that much. What would you propose doing with that? And to Ms. Cordi, how do you rationalize defense spending? So we're going to start with Mr. Myers, and you can answer either question or both.
The question of what do you do when you cut the military budget in half? You save it. What the urge in the two-party system and in America in general is, oh, well, I've cut this budget in half. Let's spend that same money on something else. We need to save that money. Now, a lot of people will say, if you cut the military budget in half, everyone's going to be out to get us. It's important to realize that the UK, China, Russia, and France are the next 4 top-funded militaries. You add all of those together, and with my proposed budget for the military, $291 billion, we would still be spending more than all those 4 countries combined. Now, I don't know if anyone here plans on going to war with the UK, France, China, and Russia all at the same time, but I feel that we would probably be covered in that situation. By cutting the military budget, this forces our generals and the Pentagon to actually look at what our priorities are for national defense. It means defending our own borders. It means protecting the allies that we find the most important, but it does not mean that we go into oil-rich countries, help the dictators that are being propped up or the Saudi royal family. It does not mean that we prop those up. It means that we look at what we actually need and we control our interests in those oil-rich nations.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cordi?
Well, defense spending is not just bullets. I would make the point in terms of oil that since 1973, Congress has kicked the issue of foreign oil supplies down, literally kicked the can down the road. We will spend more this year overseas acquiring oil than the 5 years of the Iraqi war have cost us. That should give you a little perspective. But defense spending is a lot of of very positive things. Out of defense spending have come a few things important in this valley. The computer, satellite technology that many of us depend on every day for communications and weather and other vital information, GPS, just to name a few. Right now, DARPA is probably the biggest supplier of money for research into bioenergy and into major pieces of I hate that sign, of research into communicable disease. And you know, the military does so much more than just fight wars. I'm going to beg your indulgence for about 1 second, because we need to recognize that what our military does around the world, not only to provide an umbrella for these other countries, is that it provides millions of dollars and hundreds of man-hours of humanitarian relief around the world.
Okay.
It saves lives every year.
Thank you. I do have to keep people on time. That's my job. Several questions have a statement along with the question. We always say, please ask a question, don't make a statement. So some of these questions, I'm going to take the prerogative of getting rid of the statement and asking a question, and this is one of them. So if your question isn't asked the way you wrote it, that's why. The question is about Afghanistan and Iraq and our work there. So, how do you plan to restore and free both of these countries from U.S. occupation? And Ms. Cordi, you get to start.
Well, I think General Petraeus has gone a long way toward getting us out of Iraq. It is reasonable to assume that we will pull all of our combat support and combat troops out of Iraq within the next 2 years. It's going very well as wars go. A war is a deplorable thing, but you know, as wars go, we are making progress. It's slow, it's steady. If we stay the course, we'll come out with not a look-alike American democracy, but a country where a very rich tradition will be empowered. It'll be a federal system. In Afghanistan, we face a very different situation, and we should be very grateful to the men and women who serve, especially in our special forces, who are very skilled at building civilian structures, schools, local town councils, and other kinds of 20th century, not 21st century, but 20th century political and economic structures. They're helping the Afghan farmers learn how to farm something other than opium. And we should all be grateful to them for that. Afghanistan is, however, a NATO responsibility. And the point that my opponent makes about the comparative size of the militaries should also be looked at in terms of who is contributing to this NATO-led effort, in what proportion.
Thank you very much. Mr. Myers.
I want to first respond to a couple things Ms. Cordi said. She was talking about the wonderful things that the military and the Defense Department has done, the wonderful inventions that have come out of it. One thing the Defense Department hasn't funded and hasn't created is energy independence. And that's why we're in the state that we're in right now. That's why we have to keep spending billions and billions and billions of dollars on the military. She also made some very good points about what the military does that is humanitarian. Well, we have a humanitarian organization. It's called the Peace Corps. I served in it. We taught people how to farm, and I don't think anyone learned how to farm opium. But back to Iraq and Afghanistan. As a student, I wrote, as we were going to war in Iraq, I wrote that this was a mistake. And as a protester, I felt incredibly sad that my government wasn't listening to me. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to run 5 years later. But the idea of staying the course in these areas doesn't work. How long did we need to stay the course in Vietnam? And other people in this room would know better because I wasn't born yet. But how long do we need to stay the course in these areas before we realize that we should not be there? We need to keep our hands out of the Middle East. And the only way to keep our hands out of the Middle East is to not have the interest in foreign oil.
Thank you. Trying to think of how to word this one.
Rewriting them. Don't rewrite them, please.
Oh, it's okay. I'll get it. Okay. Would you support impeaching and prosecuting Bush, Cheney, Rice, Rumsfeld, and Gonzalez for invading Afghanistan and Iraq?
For the war.
Well, not from the audience, please.
Read my question, please.
I have the ability to read the question the way I want to read it. We're going to start with Mr. Myers.
So the audience isn't helping here.
We're going to go with Mr. Myers.
Read the question as it was written.
I read it the way I wanted to read it. Mr. Myers, would you answer, please?
Absolutely. So it's no doubt that George Bush and his administration.
We're going to give you an extra minute.
Thank you. I'll just wait.
Okay. I would appreciate it if you would be quiet or leave the audience, please. And give our attention to Mr. Myers. We'll start the timing again.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So there should be no doubt at this point about the war crimes that the Bush administration has planned, the lies that they've given to the American people, the fact that we have Guantanamo Bay, the fact that we have espoused this policy of extraordinary rendition, where we can take citizens from any country in the world, intercept them, and transport them to another country where they can be tortured under our watch, but not us actually doing the torturing. And of course, that was sort of a intermediate step, because now we actually do the torture as well, whether it's the CIA or the Army. The Bush administration has been a huge problem in this country, and I do support impeachment proceedings. But it's important to remember that these problems in America did not start with the Bush administration. They are not just from the past 8 years. They have been perpetuated by decades of Democrats and Republicans. It was a Democrat who put us into the Vietnam War. So it's just coincidental that a Republican put us into the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Bill Clinton was just as happy to bomb Iraq for the 8 years of his presidency. So the problems that we're coming up with are based on not George Bush as an individual, not certain vice presidents, not certain attorney generals, but the two-party system that that gives the American people no choice. Thank you.
Ms. Cordi.
26 days before an election, by the time we could impeach him, he'll be out of office. There's been a lot of talk about this, but they didn't commit a crime. They created an intelligence assessment in the light of 9/11, a fact that changed all of our lives. I clearly remember where I was that morning. Based on the best intelligence of the U.S., Britain, France, Germany, Israel, Russia. There was, and Congress saw that intelligence. Congress went along with and passed a war resolution, and only Congress can do that. No president can go to war. No president can create a budget. No president can do anything without the consent of Congress. So we'd have to impeach Congress, too. On the subject of Donald Rumsfeld, I think the greatest mistake of George Bush's presidency was Donald Rumsfeld. The Iraq War would have been very different if we had followed the Powell Doctrine of overwhelming force. It would have been very short. It would have been we wouldn't have lost 4,000 brave Americans. And so the greatest failing, in my view, of George Bush was that he hired Rumsfeld and then didn't fire him.
Thank you. Now we come to time for closing statements. You have 2 minutes to tell the audience why you're running for Congress and why they should vote for you. So we'll start with Ms. Cordi.
For 8 years, Mike Honda has worked harder to increase the Democratic Party's power in Washington than he has to represent the legitimate interests of the 273,000 voters in this congressional district. As a technology industry executive and an entrepreneur, I have a track record of getting the difficult done. Among my accomplishments were the re-engineering of the California Water Project and helping to keep your lights on in 2001. So I know how to climb down in a turbine and make it happen, okay? But for more than 2 decades, I provided leadership in a variety, many I can't talk about, of situations where that were difficult and that were successfully executed because, again, I have a way of helping people to see what they have in common instead of what they have in difference. The American people want change. What they want in Washington is representatives who are committed to their welfare, not the politicians' welfare. I have a business. If I'm elected and you don't like what I did in 2 years, you can send me home. And I am a mom and I'm a grandmother. And if you elect me, I'm going to spend every single day working with other congressmen to make sure that we leave our children a better world. And you know what? I'll be living in this district, not in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much. Mr. Myers?
One thing I want to do is, first off, mention my website. It's Myers for California. That's MYERSFOR California.com. You can read more about me there. You can also email me personally, peter@myersforcalifornia.com. And my cell phone number, 408-242-4212. This is the openness that you don't get with the 2 major parties. I'll repeat my phone number again for those of you at home who reach for your pencil, 408-242-4212. I'm running for a few reasons. One is the 2-party system that is not serving us. Another is I'm a young person. I'm 25 years old. Ms. Cordi said she was a mother and a grandmother. I'm a son and a grandson. I am the generation that right now is being saddled with astronomical debt. I'm the generation that is being brought into war after war after war. I'm the generation that probably will not have Social Security when I retire. I'm the generation that is being, although I don't personally use it, I'm the generation that is being arrested more and more for marijuana crimes, something that is that is a harmless substance, no more harmful than cigarettes or alcohol. I believe that, I didn't get a chance to mention this, but I believe that marijuana should be taxed. It should be legalized to the same folks that cigarettes or alcohol are legal to. We should tax it and use those funds to help fund a healthcare system. But the reason why I'm running is because I'm the generation that right now is getting lost in America. I'm the generation that's being saddled with that debt, and that generation that right now isn't voting, doesn't feel that they have a voice, and the generation that needs to step up and change America. So I hope that you'll vote for me, help me change America, and help someone elect your son or your grandson's age.
Thank you very much. We thank these candidates for being here. And they may be excused as they wish, but we also advertised that we were going to have a forum for the 22nd Assembly District. We were unable to get a response from one of the candidates, so as I explained at the beginning, if we don't have 2 candidates, we can't have a forum. We're not allowed to do that. But Paul Fong, one of the candidates, has submitted a statement, and I can read that statement. So That's what I'm going to do right now. Hello, my name is, and now you have to pretend I'm Paul Fong. Hello, my name is Paul Fong. I am a candidate for the 22nd Assembly District. I worked with my father to build our nursery in Sunnyvale. As a young man, I opened the Flower Cottage, a shop to sell what my family grew, but soon I turned the back room into a center for grassroots politics. Community leaders recruited me into a lifetime of activism. I became a founding member of Asian Americans for Community Involvement. I fought for equal housing and educational opportunities. I participated at the first Earth Day, and I have been a lifelong pro-choice advocate. Today, I serve on the boards of Community Housing Developers, which is the largest builder of affordable housing in Santa Clara County, and Sacred Heart Community Services, which provides critical aid to our most needy. In 1993, I was elected to the Foothill De Anza Community College District Board of Trustees, and I am currently serving my 4th term. I also serve on the board of the California Community Colleges Trustees. Currently, I'm a professor at Evergreen Valley College. I have been teaching political science for over 28 years, working with young people and inspiring them to be civic-minded and engaged. As a professor and community college trustee, I change young lives through education. I have received many honors for my work, but the 2004 Wall of Tolerance Award, signed by Rosa Parks, was my proudest moment. I want to continue changing things for the better, and my platform is straightforward: promote education, protect our environment, and provide an equitable society. I am proud that Representatives Mike Honda, Zoe Lofgren, and Anna Eshoo have joined 22nd District Assemblymember Sally Lieber, Senators Elaine Alquist and Joe Simidian in supporting my candidacy. I would be honored to have your vote. And that is the statement of Paul Fong for 22nd Assembly District. I've been asked to explain why I either rewrite questions or rephrase them. In the League, we like to ask questions that will elicit answers and not make statements. So if I feel that there is a statement in the question, I will rephrase it. And what you can do if you want to ask the question the way you wrote it is to talk to the candidates afterwards and talk to them. And so now I come to my closing statements. The League of Women Voters is a trusted, nonpartisan political organization. Our members do the hands-on work that safeguards democracy and leads to civic improvement. As a League member, I believe I have the opportunity to contribute in a leadership role, such as this one, moderating a forum, that has an impact on local, state, and even national issues. If you are interested in learning about how you can become involved, I would encourage you to pick up some of the League's information available here today, or visit our website at cs.ca.lwvnet.org. Also, you can find more information about candidates and all the ballot measures by going to smartvoter.org. That is the League's online election information site. Thank you for coming, and be sure to vote on November 4th. Good night.